Well, it's 10 o'clock. Want to thank everybody for showing up today. This is the Peaceful Parenting meetup group. It's going to be a monthly thing happening every the first Thursday of each month. I am a newfound father of a 6-month-old and a 20-month-old and
a 20-year-old.
Oh, thank you. A 20-year-old. That sounds even crazier. And in order for me to be able to have the support and community that I was looking for, I figured it'd be great to put together this monthly meetup to meet other people with like minds who wish to parent in a way that's non-punitive. And non-punitive means that you don't use physical force, no spanking, and you don't resort to punishments or rewards. And the goal of that is to really have a connection-based parenting approach with your child so that you don't have to resort to because I said so. I have a story from my childhood of when my mom used that with me, and it was after I was probably 13 and I had a reasoning mind and I kept asking like, why? And she resorted to that, I'm sure because I exhausted her. But that really upset me because it kind of short-circuited my mind because it didn't answer the burning questions that I had. And in that, it really started a chasm of distrust with my relationship with my parents. So with that, we really want to find tools and strategies to be able to live in a more connection-based relationship with our kids. So each month, we're going to be having different types of tools and experts in their field joining us and kind of giving us more and more resources in order to parent in a way that reflects our values. So today I'm welcoming Alan and Tess, and before I hand it over to them, I'm just going to do a little housekeeping. First off, I'll let the callers that are with us right now go ahead and say your name and where you're from, and also how you heard about this, and if you've ever if you have a short story about when anyone's ever or your parent ever used because I said so. Whitney, would you like to start? You're on mute.
Okay.
Great. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Whitney. I'm from Bellingham, Washington. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're very passionate, just like their father and I. And I wasn't raised very punitively, but I am from a broken and blended home. And my oldest son made me realize that I needed more resources to parent with even more grace than I had known, because there's so many details where shame was used, even if it wasn't intentional, but almost manipulative. Like, I don't want to punish you, so come on, don't disappoint me, do the right thing. And it was, I had a potted plant in my kitchen, and when my oldest was just, that crawling age, he went and he would go dig and eat. And I caught him eating the fertilizer out of the plant, and it terrified me. And I was like, oh no, and I instantly reacted in shame, like, look what you're doing. And I looked at his face and was like, oh no, I'm going to crush your little spirit. So since then, I have read all of the books and gone to all of the seminars, and I am thrilled to hear that this one is more community-based, it seems like, for that consistent network instead of just to receive information.
Awesome. Well, Whitney, it's really nice to meet you. Thanks for calling in and taking the time. I'm asking that while you're not talking, that you put yourself on mute so that we don't disrupt the conversation. And Monique, Do you have any stories after you introduce yourself of when that was used with you of because I said so?
No, I don't really have any stories, but I'm Monique and I have 2 kids. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. We do have a chat feature on this. I guess with the phone, it's going to be not accessible. So if you do have a burning question, feel free to perhaps take your phone off mute and hit a keypad just so you send a tone, and then we'll circle over to you. All right. Well, I'd love to introduce Alan and Tess, and if you guys wouldn't mind, before jumping into your background, kind of what your parenting unit is like, or your family unit is like, and if you have any stories that have to do with because I said so in your past. Alan?
Sure, no problem. Hi, my name is Alan Seid. You just want us to tell you what our family thing is like, our parenting unit?
Yeah. How many do you have? What kids do you have and their age?
Well, between the 2 of us, we have 4 children, ages 7, 10, 11, and 14.
Wow.
And the 2 oldest are the 11-year-old and the 14-year-old are girls. The other 2 are boys. And we're co-parenting with the people that we had those children with. So we didn't have those children with each other. We're partners, and we're not with our exes, but we're very amicable with our exes and coordinating with them and co-parenting that way.
Oh, thanks. And Tess, you just moved here from Idaho, is that correct?
Yep, from Moscow, Idaho, in the northern part of the state.
Awesome. And you guys are out in, is it Kendall?
Kendall, Washington, yep.
Nice. How long have you been part of the Whatcom community?
Who?
Well, you, Alan.
Yeah, because Tess moved here in July. I moved to Whatcom County in the year 2000.
Awesome. Wow. Well, do either of you have any stories with that involve because I told you or because I said so from your parents?
You want to go first?
Gosh, which one to choose? You know, a big part of what's inspired me to learn tools such as NVC is my level of dissatisfaction with some of the parenting strategies I saw as a kid. And so one story in particular was that you know, because I told you so, because I said so, were those kind of phrases were a big part of what I heard. And I remember one time being in the car with my dad, and he went into his work, and he's like, just stay in the car. And after a while, I really had to pee. And I just sat there having to pee instead of just going into the building, because it was like, well, my dad said I had to stay in the car. And I hadn't ever experienced any flexibility in, you know, like, well, you know, but it would be okay. And I just remember that level of desperateness. And so I started honking the horn, like, maybe he'll come out and tell me I can come in. And eventually the secretary came out and was like, stop doing that. But it just never occurred to me that it would be okay to just go in and, you know, say, hey, where's the toilet? Yeah, just feel kind of sad looking back on that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Alan?
You know, Joshua, I had a very opposite experience. Not that my parents were free from punitive consciousness, but my mother taught me to question. She told me to ask why. She wanted me to understand, and she encouraged me to question and ask why. And that totally got me in trouble in school. Because when I had a genuine curiosity, they took it as insubordination. So how am I going to use long division in my life? Go to the principal's office.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty rough.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
Why don't we start off with giving a little bit of your professional background for both of you, and then we can see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we ask for any questions right now, or maybe after an intro?
Say that again?
Perhaps after you give your background and intro to NVC, we can open up and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to start with a quote, if you don't mind, and then we'll introduce ourselves, and then we can do like a quick recap of nonviolent communication or NVC, and then we can go into questions. Sound good?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And you know, there's quite a bit more context too that I'd like to offer. But here's a quote by the philosopher and poet Khalil Gibran, where he wrote, "Keep me away from the wisdom which does not cry, the philosophy which does not laugh, and the greatness which does not bow before children."
That's nice.
So my name is Alan Seid. I run an organization along with Tess called Cascadia Workshops. And Cascadia Workshops focuses on bringing tools and skills to people who are committed to making a difference in the world. I live on 25 acres in community with other people out in the Kendall area. And I've been a certified trainer in Marshall Rosenberg's process, nonviolent communication, for about 15 years. And I travel internationally to teach and teach courses online and have thousands of subscribers online. And I'm a parent, and parenting is really tough work. And so I just want to acknowledge to parents here on the call and parents watching this later that it's really challenging, and I just want to acknowledge that. Yes.
My name is Tess Burke, and I am a certification candidate in nonviolent communication. And so I'm waiting on what to say.
We'll talk about your parenting. I think your parenting is amazing.
My son does have some significant differences from many children. Some ways in which his growth is on a slower timetable, and some ways in which it's, you know, he's really smart, and it just makes for a really different experience than what I had expected parenting would be. And it's really been a huge challenge to me to live with the integrity and the care that I wanted, and I appreciate the opportunity, and it also gives me a lot of compassion for when we're not able to do that. So I'm really excited to just share and talk about my hard-earned lessons and just how NVC has really contributed to the strength of our connection and being a more effective parent there. So.
Thanks, Tess. Thanks, Alan. Well, so what is NVC in a nutshell? If you can condense it into just a few moments, just so we can get something to latch onto in order to build the rest of the conversation off of.
Yeah, NVC, or nonviolent communication, was created by a man named Marshall Rosenberg, and the purpose of it is to create the quality of connection out of which we spontaneously enjoy contributing to one another's well-being. So it's a set of tools. Some people think of it as a process for creating a high quality of connection, preventing and resolving misunderstandings and conflicts, and generally deepening relationships so that we enjoy each other more and can get on with what we're here to do in life.
Thanks for that.
Oh, you're muted.
Mm.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
You're back.
Thanks for that nice introduction. So in what ways does this actually, what does this look like in real life? Like how would you apply NVC in the relationship with your kids?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer.
Well, I see a couple parts in which it's really helpful. There's a four component process that you can use to help develop a lot of inner clarity. Like, what do I want? What's going on for me in this moment? Which in turn gives you the speed with which to resolve conflicts as they're happening. So I remember the day that I realized that me being really tired was actually an okay reason to say no to something my son wanted. It wasn't because I don't want to. It was, or because I can. It was like, oh, no, I'm feeling tired, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean no, never. And so being able to be in touch with what's going on in ourselves allows us not only to respond, but also that models for our children how they can be clear on what's going on within themselves. And when we both have that clarity, working out conflicts becomes much easier. And I would say that the NVC is primarily a change in consciousness, but this 4-part process, when you practice it, helps you develop it.
That's really helpful. I remember this from my past, and I'm already experiencing it with my kids, that desire to try and only present like you have things under control to your kids. So you're never showing weakness, or you're never showing doubts or insecurity or feeling tired. You only present this very curated perception to your kids to try and I'm sure most parents are wanting the best for their kids, so they're wanting to only show them their best, but really not showing how we manage our own emotions and stresses of our lives could really leave the kid lacking in the skills to be able to do so for themselves.
Yeah, we don't want to model for our children that it's not okay to be authentic, right? We want to be real. At the same time, I find that some parents go so far as to rely on their younger children for emotional support, and I don't think that's entirely healthy for the relationship or for the child. Part of the issue why parenting is so challenging is that it really does take a village. So in pre-modern times, we had the aunties, the uncles, the grandmas, the grandpas. We had this whole support network, but you were kind of stuck with who you were born with. Like if you didn't like your uncle, you were, too bad. That was who was in your family. Then we came up with this institution called the nuclear family, which I think is brutal and inhumane. because of the isolation of it, because there's so much pressure to be everything for your child. It's hard enough as a couple, and single parents have it many times harder. So now we have this opportunity in postmodern or post-postmodern times to start to build our support network, start to build our community, and have that sense of chosen family, because it really does take having more adults, just even for support for us. So if my child does something that is really upsetting, how can I get that emotional support somewhere so that I'm not just going off on my child, and then I can come back and have a clear communication about this didn't work for me and this is why, and then what are we going to do about it, so that I'm not lashing out in pain at my child. So but yeah, we also want to model that we're real. So I've cried in front of my children. One mistake I think parents make is they say conflict equals bad, and so they don't present any disagreements or conflicts in front of their children, or when they do, it's because they've already lost control and they're off the deep end and they're just freaking out in front of the kids. And so what my children's mother and I have tried to model is, how can we have a disagreement? How can we have even a conflict and do it in a healthy, respectful way, all the way to getting to the other side of the conflict where we're more connected, there's more mutual understanding, and there's a resolution. So we haven't tried to hide conflict from the children. There are some times when we've said, hit the pause button. Like, maybe not now. Maybe let's discuss this later when we're cooled off a little bit. That has happened. But we also haven't tried to hide it, and we've tried to model a healthy approach to conflict. And I would love for more parents to have those skills.
I'd like to add something. I was a single parent for 8 years, and with this pretty intense kid. And not everything was always easy, not with him and not with my other life circumstances. And I found that he really did want to know what was going on, and I didn't want to put the pressure of it all being on him to be there for me. So a large part of what I tried to do was give him one feeling and one need that was going on for me, and a clear way for him to contribute. So I would say, like, wow, I'm feeling really sad because I just want things to be easier.
At what age?
So this was probably between like 5 and 9. It was so I'm just really sad because I'd like things to be easier, and and he would be like, "Well, I want to help you," and I'd be like, "Well, I'd really love a hug," or "I'd really love if you put the dishes from the table into the sink." So just one little thing that I knew he could do, and then what I would do is I thank you, I really appreciate that, and we'd have a nice moment of connection. And then I'd say, I'm going to call my empathy buddy. And so I'd get on the phone, and then that's when I would really let all of the frustration and with another adult who I trusted would be able to hear me out. So I found that strategy to work really well in the absence of having someone at home.
Mm.
So I'd love to just say a little bit more, Joshua, since you framed this as, how do we parent in a way that doesn't rely on punitive measures? The word punitive has the same root as the word to punish, right? And I think I just want to spell it out a little more clearly, like how coercion and punitive things happen and what the cost of it is. But really, like Tess was saying, nonviolent communication has specific tools, but the essence of it is this radical shift in consciousness of from playing the game, who's right and who's wrong, to playing the game, how can I make life more wonderful? how can we make life more wonderful? It's a huge shift, actually. And throughout my day, I might go back and forth, but all over the world, in every culture, people are playing these two games. And one is called Who's Right and Who's Wrong, and the other one is called How Can We Make Life More Wonderful? So there's really this radical shift toward partnering with our children to make life more wonderful for all of us as a family. I want to read one more quote real quick and then talk about this piece about coercion and punitive measures. So this is I'm not sure who wrote this. It might be from my favorite author, Anonymous. You may have heard of her. But it says, so often children are punished for being human. Children are not allowed to have grumpy moods, bad attitudes, disrespectful tones, or bad days, yet we adults have them all the time. None of us are perfect, and we must stop holding children to a higher standard of perfection than we can attain ourselves. It's like, how can we access this place of tenderness for ourselves, for the difficult stuff we go through, and how can we access this place of tenderness also toward our children? And instead of trying to play the game of who's right and who's wrong and trying to always get them to comply and obey, how can we actually partner with them to make life more wonderful for everybody? I think that's really the essence of how NVC applies to working with children. I think Tess wants to add something.
Well, in response to the quote, I found that one of the biggest things getting in my way of accepting, you know, like, oh, my son has bad days, he has things that he struggles with, was to look at some of the beliefs I had, that I was afraid that him having a bad day was somehow a reflection of me as a parent. That, like, I was doing something wrong, or other parents were going to judge me about it. And once I was able to recognize that I had those beliefs, that gave me a lot of ease, and saying, like, oh, of course, you know, yeah, I didn't like school today. And it's not a reflection of, that's not something that I need to be taking responsibility for.
Yeah. I've got two more quotes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's from Brene Brown, when it comes to teacher behavior. And it goes exactly what Tess was just talking about. Like, we try to be a perfect parent, or we're worried about how other people judge us as a parent.
Yeah, and Brene Brown is a shame researcher.
And Brene Brown was a researcher on shame. So here's the Brene Brown quote. She says, because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. I'll just read that one more time. It's a little dense. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So the more we're just not accepting ourselves and where we are, we're going to keep hiding a part of ourselves because we're afraid other people will judge us. But if I totally accept that part of me, then, you know, like this morning, right? My hair is a little messy, and, you know, I just wasn't trying to be perfect for the call. I'm trying to be me and real. And if somebody has an issue, I'm willing to connect with them about it. So the other quote is a quote of Marshall Rosenberg's, the guy who created Nonviolent Communication. And he said that his definition of hell on earth is both being a parent and thinking that there is such a thing as a good parent. If we think that there is such a thing as a good parent, then we're going to have this artificial, arbitrary standard. And every time we fall short of it, if we're not good, we're bad. So I'm automatically a bad parent. If I don't meet some arbitrary standard, I've decided equals being a good parent. So if we can get it out of good, bad, right, wrong, and put it into, how are we contributing to life? What makes me come alive as a person? And how can I connect with my children and help them connect with what makes them come alive? That's a totally different orientation. So I'm really open to questions and comments. I was going to talk about this coercion piece, and I think Tess has more to add too, but this is part of where the conversation's going.
Yeah, I really like that Brene Brown quote, because that inverts what we first said about feeling like we need to shield our children from conflict and from days that we're not acting our best, but really just having a partnership with our kids and being able to be real with them and have them see how we're processing our stress and bad days, and really modeling as a way for them to learn how to do so for themselves.
Yeah, and this idea of partnering with my children is not a goal. It's like a compass orientation. It's a direction I'm moving in constantly. It's not like I arrive and then we're done. It's a compass orientation, not a destination.
Nice, I like that. Well, we have a new caller who joined us. Hello, would you like to share your name? You might be on mute. From a 813 number. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, observing and listening in is fine.
Well, does any of our participants have any questions so far? Feel free to just jump on in with this amount of people. Well,
and it's fine if you don't.
Yeah. For myself, I just want to share this. I have a 6-month-old, and it's been amazing to see what level of communication that she has already been able to develop, and what she was born with, of crying and basically not crying at first. But these two distinct ways of communicating was her way of telling me that she has desires or needs that needed to be met. And Tess, I think at your last workshop, you commented on this, how when the kids are so young like that they really have to outsource the strategy in order to get their needs met. So it really falls on us as parents to be able to tune in and listen for those cues in order to be able to discern what needs are being met or not being met. And when she's a newborn, like, there was very few things that she needed in order to feel content and happy, and it's all about just figuring out what those are. I came across this quote that really supported that. It was from the book I'm reading right now on parent effectiveness training. But they said, "You would be the most efficient parent by providing your infant with a home climate in which you will know how to gratify their needs appropriately by using active listening to understand the messages that announce specifically for what his or her unique needs are." And that just helped out so much with kind of giving me a roadmap to work with, instead of feeling like I'm completely guessing what my infant needs, and not really feeling like that there is a partnership. But already, right out the gate, we have a partnership where right now she's outsourcing her ability to get her needs met to me and her mom, and we're there as kind of equals, working on trying to get those needs met.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the story, Joshua. I like a number of things about it. First of all, like, I love the emphasis on, like, you just keep learning as a parent. You know, you have a daughter who's an adult now, and yet you're still learning and looking into things. And I really like as well the part about, what does communication look like in very young children, and really learning to look for that when the words aren't yet present.
Yeah, it was shocking at first to come to that realization, like, oh, they are communicating, and there is a way to like be here with them instead of feeling like, oh man, and those first few weeks is I was just so lost with the newborn, just thinking like, I don't know what you want, and feeling like there's no way to be able to work with that. But if you tune in, and I think what that is really getting to be able to predict and to work with what your child's needs are. And I'm guessing that this just continues to develop and the communication expands. And so I really like being able to kind of have this framework right out the gate.
Yeah, and most parents who are maybe coming across nonviolent communication for the first time, they may not have that luxury, so to speak. And you know, finding out about it when our child is 9 or
30.
30 is you know, it's like we just get to start where we are and work with what we have and do what we can.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest insights I've had as a parent is around keeping both short-term objectives in mind and long-term objectives in mind. For example, let's say one of my children when they were younger, let's say my 4-year-old doesn't want to brush their teeth, right? My goal tonight is I want them to brush their teeth. That's my short-term objective. My long-term objective in relation to their teeth is that I want them to develop healthy oral hygiene habits. I have a distinct memory of being 3 years old and having the toothbrush jammed in my mouth because I had to brush my teeth, and I was crying, like really upset, and it got forced on me. And after that, I hated brushing my teeth. I never wanted to brush my teeth again. I paid for it with cavities as a kid. But it's that kind of thing. How do I balance the short-term objectives with the long-term objectives? So I'll give you another example. I mentioned earlier the purpose of NVC is to create a high-quality connection. And out of that high-quality connection, we naturally, kind of spontaneously want to contribute to one another's well-being. So I showed up at my daughter's room, who's 10. You know, I came to the door and I couldn't see the floor because her floor was covered with clothes. So at that point, initially I thought my short-term objective was to get her to pick up her clothes off the floor. But then I checked my intention. What is my intention here? Is my intention to get her to do a specific thing at any cost? Or is my intention to create a high-quality connection, out of which we'll find a win-win? Because having the clothes on the floor, I could get her to pick up her clothes and resent me for years. I could get her to pick up her clothes in a way that will lead to her hating me. So what is it that I really want? What is it that I'm really looking for here? And so I was able to shift my mindset a little bit based on my training with nonviolent communication. Come in and try to create a connection. Like, help me understand why having your clothes on the floor is the most wonderful way to live. Like, maybe I'll learn something new, you know, and help me understand how it got like this and what gets in the way of picking things up. And let me share my concerns about it. Let me share with you what comes up for me and why it doesn't work for me to have your clothes all over the floor. And just start with the connection. So we're going for connection before going for a specific outcome. I'd love to draw this on the board real quick.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say at the moment, Tess? Before?
Well, I just want to share that our ability as parents comes from our connection with our children. So when that connection is really low, they're much less inclined to listen to us and to want to do things that meet our needs. Like, hey, you know, like, we need to go grocery shopping. You know, it's time to go to grandma's house. And those conversations go very differently if there's a lot of connection or if there's not a lot.
Absolutely. I just realized that we really, people might be watching the recording, but most of our listeners now are on the phone. But what I've drawn on the board are two hearts with an arrow joining them, a two-sided arrow going between them, and then a dotted arrow going down to the word solution in a rectangle. The only insight that I really want to pass along from this illustration is connection before solution. If I jump to a solution before there's connection, then I'm forcing it on my kids. And it's very likely that they're going to resent it. So the whole "because I said so" that you started out with, Joshua, is unfortunately just a really common answer, usually when we're tired or we're burnt out or we don't have the energy or maybe we don't have the words for how to explain the deeper why. So, for example, my 2-year-old runs in the street. I'm not gonna engage in a dialogue with them. I'm going to physically grab them against their will and put them in a safe place. Maybe my arms, maybe a backpack, maybe a fenced yard. Now, the difference, if I'm in a punitive mindset, I'm like, you stupid little boy. Now daddy's gonna spank you and teach you so you learn about cards, right? And I shame them into learning about cards. Now, nonviolent communication, on the other hand, is not about being nice. It's not about being meek. It can still be super passionate, but there's no part of me that's making the other person wrong or dehumanizing them or judging them or criticizing. But I can, I will similarly grab my child out of the street against their will, and I can say, oh my gosh, daddy was really scared, really wants you to learn about cars. Daddy really wants you to be safe. So I'm being real about what was going on for me and what it is that's important to me at a deeper level, which is safety. Now, in time, that concept will make more sense. Right now, maybe there are two. But later, as we stay connected, okay, what's important to me and what's important to you? Not just because I said so. So I grew up in a very loving home that had a lot of confusion about how we motivate each other. And the definition of love was, if you really love me, you would know what I'm needing, when I'm needing it, how I'm needing it, and you would give it to me without me even having to ask. Because if I have to ask, oh, it's not the same. Now, unfortunately, what that means is that the yardstick for how much other people care about us is how psychic they are. They have to guess. So in nonviolent communication, Tess mentioned 4 components. The last component is a clear request. In NVC, we take responsibility for what we're wanting by making a clear request, but it's a request, not a demand. So again, we're looking for connection as opposed to coercion. So I'd like to spell out this coercion piece. I just want to name some motivations that we might be coming from when we're acting in that way. Fear, so motivating others through fear. Guilt, shame, duty, and obligation, to get a reward or to avoid a punishment. The insight here, like if you got one really important thing from this call, it's that the energy with which we do anything is just as important as the action itself. The energy with which we do anything for each other is just as important as the action itself. So some parents say, well, what's wrong with punishment? It works. I got my kid to do what I wanted them to do. So to those parents, I would have them ask 2 questions. What is it I want my child to do? And what do I want their reasons to be for doing it? Let's say that I want my daughter to pick up the clothes off the floor of her room. What do I want her reasons to be? Is it because if I don't, Dad will freak out? Is it because if I don't, I'm going to get punished? I hope everyone is connecting with what I'm getting at. What do I want her reasons to be? Wouldn't I rather have her see how it contributes to life, to put her clothes away or to separate the clean clothes from the dirty clothes? The point being that if somebody's really connected to how it contributes to life to do a particular action, I don't see why they wouldn't do it. So if the why I want my child to do something is because I'm afraid of getting punished, I'm afraid that we're really missing our long-term objectives for who we want our children to be in the world. I have a colleague in Nonviolent Communication, Arnina Kashtan. She's writing a book titled How to Raise Disobedient Children. And her whole point is that when people are connected to their deeper motivations, they don't make good slaves or good robots. And so what are we wanting? What are we wanting to raise? Children who can think for themselves and who are empowered in the world? Or are we trying to raise children who are simply obedient to authority? So there's some deeper questions here about what kind of society we're creating and what kind of world we want to live in. And are we preparing children to help us create that world? So open questions, comments, anything.
Yeah, when I first hear that, like I think I feel a little bit of fear of like, well, how can I not raise my kids by telling them what to do so that they do grow up as good citizens? Like that's I'm sure like a desire for most parents for them to be able to fit into a system. And to be like model citizens. So to hear how do we raise this disobedient children like immediately brings up a lot of fear.
Yeah, I get it.
That makes sense. And I think there's a difference between disobedience, as in you're telling me what I'm doing and I'm going to rebel, and disobedience in the sense of I'm going to check in with what's truly important to me. How do my needs matter? How do your needs matter? What's important to both of us? And what do I see as the best course of action given that?
That sounds a lot more rational than my own past, which I rebelled when I was 16 and got kicked out of my house and sent me on a trajectory through drugs and abuse. And because I was so rebellious against authority, and it kind of ties back down to that moment with my parents of being told because I said so, and me not being fed up and saying that's not a good enough answer for me, and so I'm going to find out things for myself. And I did it in such an angry, chaotic way that I caused a lot of my own troubles just because I didn't have the tools to like check in with myself and to observe the emotions going on and finding the root of those. Instead, I was just lashing out with those emotions or looking for ways to mask them.
Exactly. So I want to prepare my children to not give anybody else the power to make them submit or rebel. Never give anybody the power to make you submit or rebel. And what's that third path? And it's exactly as Tess was describing and as you were describing, Joshua. And those are some of the tools and skills that NVC gives me. And I find that third path where it's not about who's right and who's wrong.
Hi, Minta. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome, Minta.
So I'm wondering, given some of the conversation we had earlier, if now would be a good time to transition to a different topic, one of how do we as parents get through the day? We have these great aspirations for our children, what we'd love to help them learn, how we'd love to be in relationship with them. And how do we do it? given that there's often isolation and how do we get empathy? How do we get support? What about that part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to give this some framework, you guys just hosted an 8-hour workshop on NVC parenting, and it seemed that the majority of that workshop was focused on giving the tools to the adult to be able to manage their own emotions before the child even comes into the equation. And I think that is such a important factor to be able to start cultivating the skills in before even the whole, like, what do we do when the kid does this even enters the equation. Can you do a small recap on that area, and then we can move into maybe what this looks like once you get down to looking for strategies after the connection with the kid?
Yeah. Well, I think I want to let Alan do the recap.
Yeah.
There's just one thing I want to say to add to what you were just talking about, Joshua, is that that's exactly right. That when we're trying to teach these things to children, but we haven't integrated them ourselves, it's actually really hard to them. But if we instead focus on living that life ourselves and integrating that consciousness, then what often happens is that without much teaching, children do pick up on it. So that's why there's such a big focus on developing that consciousness and those inner resources for ourselves as parents before we ever address strategies for one.
Yeah, thanks for that. Alan, maybe a quick recap on self-connection?
Yes. Yeah, super quick recap, and also an example. So any communication process has two halves, as speaking and listening, also known as giving and receiving. In nonviolent communication, we call those honesty, or authentic self-expression, right? Being real. And the empathy side is the listening side. So how am I just fully present with the other person and really get what it is they're saying? So those are the two primary areas we think about when we think about communication, or speaking and listening. But there's this third area, which is, how am I connected to myself? How am I present with myself? And what's my self-talk? Am I putting myself down? Am I berating myself? Am I judging myself? Am I criticizing myself? And that self-connection is actually a key area. It's sort of a fulcrum point in what comes out of my mouth next. So what's happening inside me makes a huge difference in how I listen, how I'm present, and it makes a huge difference in how I express and how I communicate myself. So if I'm totally disconnected from myself, it's going to limit how honest I can be with you. And if I'm super triggered and flooded, it's going to impact how present I can be in terms of how I'm listening to what's happening for somebody else who might be in pain, and expressing it in a difficult to hear way. That's the tragedy, by the way. When we're in pain, we tend to lash out or withdraw. In other words, when we're in pain, when we most need other people's care and compassion, is when we act in ways like lashing out and withdrawing that make it least likely that we're going to get that love and care and compassion. So how can we be in the presence of somebody who's expressing themselves in a difficult to hear way and be able to still connect to their heart? It's especially important between parents and children, I think. So I remember years ago, I was trying to get a project done in my home office, and my 3-year-old was throwing a huge fit at the dining room table, and I thought mom was handling it, but it kept escalating. I was super grumpy and frustrated, and I came out of the home office like, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta get that kid to shut up. And I got within 5 feet of her, and I just stopped myself, and I went inside, and I connected to, I really need her to shut up. And then okay, so if I got her to shut up, then what would that give me? Well, if she were quiet, then that would give me some kind of support to finish my work. And I realized, and then my whole energy shifted. It's like, I just softened. I realized I wasn't needing her to shut up. I was actually needing a different kind of support. And I was able to tap into curiosity. Why was she crying? Instead of just trying to get her to shut up. So then I checked in. What's going on, honey? So she's 3. Mom had given her a beautiful bowl of blueberries. On her way to the table, 3 fell on the floor. Mom wouldn't give her another 3 because mom had already told her so many times about walking, mindfully with food to the table, and mom was frustrated. So I was able to hear how, the perfection of this bowl of blueberries had been shattered, and so we got to connect. And I gave mom a little empathy, and then back to my daughter. Hey, so would it be okay if I get you 3 more blueberries? And she was happy. The crying stopped. Everything was fine. I was able to get back to work. It didn't become this battle where I'm forcing my way to get somebody to act in a certain way because that's where I'm needed. We did it out of connection first, but it required me going inside and doing that self-connection piece. What is really happening at a deeper level, and how can I? And then I was able to get present and shifted the whole situation. So Tess had proposed shifting the conversation to talking about just our day-to-day and strategies, and I'm really open to comments and questions. I'm really happy to follow what other people would like out of the talk.
Maybe if there's a particular situation or something where it's a big struggle, like this thing's going on, or when my child does this, it's really hard for me to connect with. No.
Also earlier we welcomed some newcomers into the call, and I just wanted to welcome Minta to the call as well. Hey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pregnant. I don't have a lot with my child yet, but I'm really excited to be here and excited to hear everybody else's conversation. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Intrauterine. Yes.
I have a question about that day-to-day. Less specifically about struggles with the kids, but I wonder what your self-care balance looks like, because I've noticed that a big part of successful parenting comes from having those tools and having those kind of patterns and those cues to kind of get you back on your talking point inside your head of what your goal is. And I can't do that consistently without kind of my support network and filling up my own cup, and it almost feels like I'm chasing one after the other instead of having a consistent flow between that. It's, oh my gosh, I drained myself again, let me completely disconnect and then fill up my cup and then jump back in and bleed myself dry again.
Thank you so much. I have a lot to say. I'm going to let Tess feel that first if you want, or I can.
The thought that comes to mind for me is that I often find myself in that kind of situation when I'm learning something, and so I go between the thing that I'm learning and the old way of doing things, and back and forth, and eventually it becomes more of a flow and something that happens much more quickly. And so I just wanted to say that is maybe something that a direction that you might be going in, and that it can be important to have compassion for. We love to be able to just jump right in, and it's like, yes, I do self-care and I take care of my kids, and it's natural and fluid, and sometimes it takes a while to get there. And when we have that intention of learning and we look at it like, okay, it didn't quite work out this time, and here's what I'd like to change a little bit for next time, then we get a lot closer to our goals.
How long did that take? Can I put you in a hard spot to define eventually? I know it's always a journey, but you know, before you actually arrived to where you could confidently say, this is how I parent. And I know you don't do it perfectly, but to where it really felt natural.
Tess, I would love to hear your introduction with bringing tool of NVC into your relationship with your son again, as a maybe answering that question.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to say to Whitney, while Tess is thinking, that I share that struggle myself. So I just want to
Thank you. That's good to know I'm not alone.
No, absolutely not, and it's constant. And my tendency in that is to try to avoid the extremes. So I don't want to be totally bled dry and then have to disconnect completely to recharge. It's like, how can I try to catch it sooner before I'm really drained? But anyway, I share that struggle, and I'm not going to say that I have it down. It's like a daily, it's a daily challenge to balance things and to prioritize. So okay, back to
Thank
Tess.
you.
Yeah, I'd like to dispel any thoughts of, you know, perfection, or that balance is a static state. Because yeah, just like Alan said, like, you know, sometimes the reality is you get home and the water is not working and you don't know why, and you've been traveling for a long time and kids are unhappy and everyone's hungry, and you really just don't do as well as you wish you were. So I started learning NVC when my son was 3. I was exposed to it in a permaculture class, and at that time it was really hard, and I did find that, like you were saying, Whitney, I really did feel just totally exhausted, like just blood dry. And as time has gone along, I've learned to more recognize those cues of like, wow, you know, I'm noticing that I'm not as joyful and contributing in this moment, or I'm feeling a little more intense about something happening than I'd expect given what it is. And so to at that point, before I'm feeling like really just totally wiped out, to take a step back and say like, hey honey, you know, mommy wants to go take 20 minutes to go lie down and just be quiet. So, which segues into the other part of what I want to say is teaching kids about self-care too. That it's okay to tell kids that, and in fact, it's wonderful to tell them like, please go take care of yourself.
Well, we're modeling.
Yeah, so like, oh, I feel like I'm a little crankier hearing that request than I'd like to be. And I'm noticing it's lunchtime, so let's put the conversation on pause, have lunch, and then make the decision afterward. Or, you know, honey, I know you don't want to go to bed right now, but I'm tired, and I'm going to get really cranky if I don't get to sleep. So, you know, do you have an idea of how I can get the rest I need, even if we don't want to go to bed?
Can I take it?
Yeah.
My friend and co-parent, Trisha, and we have 3 children together, she sometimes explains to the children that she's going to take some time by herself in order to be a better mom. So she tries to frame it like, and this is why, and this is how it'll benefit you. I want to show up as a better mom for you, so I'm going to take some time to myself.
I have a funny little line on that one. When I first read Nonviolent Communication, I had it on speaker and just played it through my phone so that it would be just playing with me in the background all day. And my kids noticed the shift. And anytime that I would start to lose control, they'd say, Mom, why don't you go listen to your book about how to talk nice again? And I thought it was so great that they caught that and could, you know, trigger that back in.
That's great.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of resources for people listening. There are a lot of free resources online. you know, go to YouTube. There are so many videos with Marshall Rosenberg presenting. If you go to YouTube/Cascadia workshops, I've got a bunch of videos there. The playlist is called Effective Communication Skills. And we have a downloadable home study course that we sell on our CascadiaWorkshops.com website as well that divides the curriculum into 10 different steps, and it has an interactive workbook that goes along with the audio. So, but yeah, there are also just a ton of free workshops. And I want to mention that, you know, Joshua has this peaceful parenting meetup group that he pulled together. And one of the important pieces, one of the things that's so valuable about a group like that is parents supporting each other for empathy, finding empathy buddies, and also for sharing, you know, some of these different strategies for you know, so what did you do when that happened and things like that. I also want to mention another meetup group, which is the Effective Communication meetup group. And that's another place to get connected with a lot of effective communication skills that we can use with our children. And there's a local organization called NVC Whatcom that Joshua and Tess and I are members of, that's contributes to putting on NVC workshops in the Bellingham community.
Which is a great place, if nothing else, to find empathy buddies and other people who really have this intention to show up in life with developing these empathy and honesty skills. So I know that that's been one of the biggest contributions to me being the parent I want to be, is having the support of other people. Not even necessarily other parents, but just other people to talk about the struggle with parenting and get support.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question, Whitney, because that is, as I was saying earlier, that's one of my challenges, is keeping myself resourced enough so that I show up the way that I want to show up. I'm trying to do a lot, and it's sometimes I forget self-care. So that's one of my growing edges.
Yeah, thank you guys for your answers. I took notes.
And another angle to this is maintaining a connected relationship between the parents or the caregivers. Right now, I have my infant, and so I recognize her kind of bundle of needs that we're constantly striving to meet, but a lot of my day goes into raising the quality of connection with my wife so that we can negotiate and navigate our days without losing our cool and saying things that we wish we didn't. So that's kind of more in my face right now than the relationship with my 6-month-old.
Yeah, that's huge, because that impacts children so much if the adults are not on the same page versus if the adults are on the same page. It makes a huge difference. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, any other questions?
Yeah, so I got a message from one of the callers. She says her situation is a 14-year-old is dating a person that doesn't want to connect with our family. We are a close homeschooling family. It is a new stage for us to have this disconnect with our daughter. How she is continuing to be responsible with her household tasks and communicate. She is continuing to be responsible with her household tasks and communicating, but is shifting her attention more to this other person that has no interest in getting to know her family. How have others maintained connection during this natural developmental stage?
Wow. Is it okay if I go first, or are you ready with that stuff?
Okay.
Well, first I just want to acknowledge how challenging that is. It sounds really, really challenging, and so I just want to make space for that. I just want to acknowledge that. Sounds really, really hard. The way that I've gone about it, and I want to emphasize the thing I mentioned earlier about I want to balance my short-term objectives with my long-term objectives. And I have a 14-year-old, and teenagers are particularly tricky in the sense that sometimes we experience teenagers as pushing away, and it's easy to interpret that as a rejection or that they don't want anything to do with our family. It sounds like your 14-year-old is still communicating and still, you know, doing the things that you agree to as a household, so that's great. But just for other parents with teenagers, I want to emphasize the difference between differentiation and dissociation. So just because I'm trying to become my own person and differentiating from you, parents, and pushing off in order to differentiate and become my own person does not mean I'm dissociating from you or totally disconnecting. So just to put that as a context here, that it's natural for teenagers to want to be more independent. Now, if you can put energy into the quality of the connection with your 14-year-old and really emphasize for her how much you would love to get to know this other person who's important to her, and how much you would love it if this other person were open to your family, and why it's important to you that someone who she's intimate with, why it's important to you that they stay connected with your family. Because for her, this is going to be a long-term source of tension if she stays with this person that, you know, she's connected with her family, but this other person doesn't want to connect. So that's going to be an ongoing source of tension. The other piece is to see how much compassion you can muster for this other person's choice to not connect with you. What might be true and real for them that's getting in the way of wanting to connect? Is it fear? Or is it something else? So I have a curiosity there. But I think the more empathy and honesty that you can have with your 14-year-old, you might learn something that you hadn't realized was something valuable. So I just muted Monique just to preserve the quality of the recording.
Thanks.
But I want to emphasize that you know, NVC is not a way to manipulate specific behaviors. It's a way to create a high quality of connection, out of which we're more likely to want to contribute to each other. So use NVC as a way to connect with your daughter, to get more information and to help her know how much you care. And things are more likely to move in the direction you're wanting from that point. Yes.
Yeah, so I think what I want to add is similar to what Alan said, but maybe a little bit different perspective. What I want to bring up is that autonomy and connection can coexist. You know, just like many people have great relationships with their parents as adults, that can happen with teenagers too. It's not natural for teenagers to disconnect. It's natural for teenagers to become more individual. So it's just a little difference to watch out for. Like, is my child becoming more of their own person, or is it, you know, moving away from the family? All parenting happens in the context of connection, of the relationship. So one thing that comes up for me is really wanting to make sure of is how strong is my connection with my child, and because without connection we don't have influence. And I really don't want that to sound like, you know, influences and we manipulate them, but no one's going to listen to us before that we have connection. So our child isn't going to hear our concerns or hear our experience. Like, honey, here's what I see in this relationship. I'm not sure if it contributes to you. You know, what do you think about it? We can't have those conversations if there's not a relationship. So I just want to clarify that that's what I mean is quite important.
Yeah, and another way of looking at that is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I was having this experience with my 14-year-old. She's been a teenager since she was 8. She's wanted to be an adult her whole life. She just wanted to skip childhood and run her life. And I was having the experience that she was disconnecting. You know, how was your day? Fine. How are you? Fine. Is there anything you want to share about your day? No. I would get, you know, one syllable answers. And But I kept holding space. I kept holding space. I kept holding space. And I kept showing up with presence and with care. And if I wasn't getting anything from her, I would disclose vulnerably. You know, I really miss connecting with you, and I love you so much, and I just wish we could be closer. And then that would be it. Or she'd say something like, get out of my room. And then I'd say, you know, when I hear in that tone of voice, that's a little hard for me because I really want to trust in your care too. And I'm happy to give you space if that's what you're wanting. So she'd be like, get out of your room. And so, get out of my room. And so then I give myself empathy. I give myself like, oh, you know, just in silence, just, man, that I feel sad. And I feel some disappointment because I really value, you know, kindness and care. And I really want to trust that she does love me. But I just kept showing up. And now that whole relationship is shifting now because she's trusting my presence. She's trusting that I'm there. And something really sweet happened the other day where she was super upset. And I went in her room just to see how she was. And she put her head on my shoulder and she just cried. And I just held her and she sobbed. And I didn't grill her. I didn't investigate. What happened? Are you okay? I just held space. And that meant the world to her. Once she had calmed down, she was open to sharing more. And it just reinforced this piece for me around my long-term objective is having the kind of relationship where they feel comfortable opening up to me about anything. And if they associate me over the years with trying to get them to act a certain way out of fear, or guilt, or shame, if they associate me with those motivations over the long term, it's less likely that they're actually going to want anything to do with me when they're older. So rather than seeing children as incomplete adults, we can start seeing them as complete human beings who happen to be a younger age and connect with them as human beings. That's my goal. That's what I'm trying to do with my kids. Really preserve that relationship into the long run and be here for them as a resource, not somebody who's, you know, running their life or telling them what to do all the time.
But rather we're learning them our skills in order so that they can develop them themselves.
That's super, super helpful to hear. I've myself have kind of condensed that into like maintaining a quality of trust in between us. And I heard this great kind of Lipman's test for to help you maintain that level of trust. And essentially, are the behaviors, like, what if the behaviors that your child are doing that you're wanting to react to was your roommate or your partner doing these same things? Like, how would you treat your roommate or your partner in that type of relationship instead of this kind of looking down upon a kid, but maintaining them as a human being instead of someone below you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really like that question, Joshua. I'm kind of chuckling to myself because I'm just imagining, you know, walking in and seeing something you don't like, and you know, like spanking your roommate or something. What would that do to the quality of connection?
Yeah. Right. It's silly, but it's so effective. It's such a like simple way to like insert it into a new relationship paradigm. And then it's like that's absurd. Like so many behaviors that we treat ourselves or treat our kids with become absurd when we put it in that kind of scenario. And I came across this recently, but like over the last few hundred years, we've really found equality with the different races on the planet, that we're all equals as human beings. And then it's kind of evolved into gender having equality between us. And more recently, it's like sexual preference. having equality amongst our society, but kids hasn't quite evolved into that same scenario where we're treating our kids as equals and as human beings. And that's really one of the main purposes behind peaceful parenting, is to elevate their status so that we can operate on the same levels and be partners, instead of us resorting to because I said so and telling them what to do.
Yeah, great. And it is hard with kids because as adults we do have far more resources than children, and so it's on us to change that. And one small change I want to add to what you said is that instead of elevating the status, I think we're trying to change the paradigm entirely of who's worth more.
Mm-hmm.
Into the, you know, we just exist and
Everybody's needs matter.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Alan, at your recent workshop, you gave a scenario about how to help two fighting siblings. Could you reiterate that? Because I just found that such a powerful tool, because it can really be applied in a lot of areas in our lives.
Yeah. You want me to do it with the puppets too?
Bust them out. Yeah.
So for people who are new to NVC, we use the metaphor of the giraffe for nonviolent communication. The giraffe is one of the land animals with the largest heart, and it has a perspective that anytime we create a win-lose situation in the long run, we also lose, because we're all interconnected, interrelated, interdependent, and ultimately we reap what we sow. So I recently taught, actually Tess and I were in Brazil. We were invited down there by the Brazilian Institute for NVC, and we're down there for a couple of weeks teaching, and the very last workshop was on conflict resolution. And for people here who are fans of conflict resolution, I'll just use the very edge of the board here that we can use. And for those of you listening on the phone, I'll tell you what this word is. I wrote ABABAB, ababab. And so if you can imagine, so this is the key of conflict resolution. We're using nonviolent communication for conflict resolution. Person A speaks, person B reflects back what they heard, person A confirms that's how I wanted to be heard. Then person B speaks. Then person A reflects back what they heard. Then person B confirms that's how they wanted to be heard.
We had a low quality video. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Person A speaks. Person B reflects back what they heard. Person A confirms that's how they wanted to be heard. Then person B speaks. Then person A confirms that that's reflects back what they heard. Then B confirms that that's how they wanted to be heard. And then you start over. So this goes to mediating between groups or mediating between children. So I gave an example at the last workshop about my two daughters having a conflict. I think at the time, one of them was 5 and the other one was 8, something like that. And so I'm going to use the giraffe puppets just to illustrate. So this is Satya, who's 6 or 5, and this is Ari, who's 8. And I saw them playing tug of war with a doll. And very often they wouldn't be able to get through their own differences on their own, but a few times I found myself needing to step in because they were both wanting to be heard at the same time, and it was just escalating, and it seemed really frustrating for both of them. So I was like, okay, girls, I'm noticing that you're having a hard time working this out on your own. Come on, let's sit down, let's have a conversation about it. So Satya, what is it that you'd like your sister to hear? I was playing with that doll first. Ari, could you tell your sister back what it is that she'd like you to hear? She said she wanted that doll first. Is that how you want to be heard? Mm-hmm. So we just did these first 3, right? Person A spoke, person B reflected back, and then person A confirmed. That's how they wanted to be heard. And so then, Ari, what is it that you would like your sister to hear? No one was playing with that doll. It was just sitting on the floor. No one was playing with it at all. Satya, could you tell your sister back what it is that she'd like you to hear? Yeah, but the problem is that I was just, look, hold on, honey, hold on. Did you just tell her back what it is that she said? She said the doll was on the floor, but the thing is, hold on. So the doll, she said the doll was on the floor and no one was playing with it? Uh-huh. Is that how you want to be heard? Yeah. Okay, now what would you like your sister to hear? Well, the thing is that I was playing with it, but I just went in the bathroom and I just left it on the floor for a quick moment, and I was going to keep playing with it. You tell your sister back what it is that you heard? That she was playing with it, but just left it on the floor while she went to the bathroom. Is that how you want to be heard? Mm-hmm. Like that. We just continued back and forth, just like this image here of the two hearts, and created connection before going to a solution. Now, the 3 times I've done this kind of mediation with my daughters, we usually get to a point, once I trust that they're hearing each other, and I ask them, do you have a solution? You know, what kind of solution do you have for the situation? So the first 2 times we did this, they came up with a solution and it was great. And then I remember one other time we did this process, and in the middle of it, they both got up and walked away. And one of them started playing with something and the other one's playing with something else. I'm like, what happened? But apparently they had found their solution. They were over it and they just started doing something different. So, so this is what we do, is we slow it down and we allow one message to come through, and just checking that the message got through the way that the person was intending, and then the message can go the other direction. Then we hear from the other person, and we do that back and forth, like it shows there between those 2 hearts, and we work on connection before solution. And that's what ABABAB is. ABAB.
Super helpful. That's a really powerful tool. I'm really looking forward to getting more practice with it. We're down to our last few minutes. We really crammed a lot into this hour and a half. I hope our visitors were able to get some tools for their toolbox from this. Alan, you have lots of more resources on your website, CascadiaWorkshops.com. Is that correct?
That's right, CascadiaWorkshops.com. We actually have, I created a free video training series that I put on the website, Black Belt Communication Skills, plural, blackbeltcommunicationskills.com. No hyphen, no anything, and people can get a free video training series there. So that's another way, and people can also contact me through the website, through CascadiaWorkshops.com.
Excellent. Well, we have a Facebook. Go ahead.
Both Tess and I work as coaches and consultants, and so we work with individuals and couples and families. So if people need extra support, they can reach out.
And they could email you at alan@cascadiaworkshops.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Fantastic. Well, the Peaceful Parenting has a Facebook group on Facebook that is Peaceful Parenting Wacom. Right, let me get this right. In it is where we're going to be sharing resources and be able to communicate to one another and organize. Each month we're going to continue to bring new tools to this discussion, and I really appreciate Alan and Tess making time for you guys being able to share your area of expertise. Love to have you guys back on.
Thanks for the opportunity.
In future episodes. Meanwhile, feel free to join the Facebook group, and we'll continue this conversation there. And I'll share the Black Belt course in that group. And then meanwhile, I'll see you guys all next month.
I also want to appreciate the parents who came to this call, and anyone who's watching it later.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you all for tuning in and pursuing the goal of being a peaceful parent.